online now.
Okay, we'll see here.
New event is starting. Okay. Maybe not.
Oh, I see it.
Wait, what?
Apparently we're live.
Yay!
Somehow, somewhere.
Somewhere.
Oh, there we go. Live
Awesome.
now. Hello, one person watching.
Probably a
Oh,
robot.
four people now. Hello, 4 people watching. That's great.
I still can see it.
It's on your home, not on your videos. Yeah.
Oh, that's like the most professional intro ever. Logic make an intro.
No, it's 9 people. Hello, 9 people. We're talking about something. I'm not sure what. I'm not sure why I'm here, but I'm here.
Okay, I can see the chat now. So, hello. Oi. Ouch. Okay.
What, do you hear yourself?
Yeah, I did hear myself.
Oh, great.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So,
I can hear you echoing or something. Oh, maybe it's just, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how to fix that.
No, we're professionals here. We know what we're doing. We're not 55 minutes late or anything because of technical issues.
Okay. So, are we alive? Okay, we wanted to talk about, first of all, consciousness and sentience and the right. And I think it's important to define them in general, because at the end of the day, if we cannot define them for us, how can we define them for robots? Like if you say a robot has to be able to think in a certain way, and a human is not able to think in a certain way, then how on earth are we? This is so bad.
You're hearing yourself in your ears, aren't you?
Myself.
Yeah. No, it's horrible when you when you hear the delay like 1 second behind. Don't even try. Just power through. Take the headphones off, maybe.
Yeah, maybe that's a better way of doing it. And then just putting them on whenever I want to hear you.
Yeah.
Shifty say something. Am I still on?
Save us.
Something.
Help. We're floundering.
So we want to talk about, so Yusuf was saying, sentience, probably more accurate than say something like AI, because we want to be like more broad, since we don't know where it's going specifically in the future. But the general topic is, okay, so this stuff's going to exist. We should probably think about what kind of rights, if any, that this stuff would deserve, this agent or entity would deserve. And so we're going to do some definitions first. Yeah. By the way, not to sidetrack too much, am I the only one that just thinks that's weird at all? Like segregated bathrooms? Like that just sounds like
kind of. Yeah, I mean,
race,
it's a little
segregated.
pointless. Just like, I mean, just have all stalls and everybody's locked in. It's fine.
Exactly.
Anyway, the only reason you're outside of the stall is to wash your hands. So
Yeah.
No big deal, really.
That's weird. It makes me think of like the 60s and racism.
Well,
like whites only or something.
It's not like one is inferior bathroom. Well, actually, the men's bathroom is usually the inferior bathroom, to be fair.
I don't know. That's not what I hear with certain feminine hygiene products.
You know, I have to say, it's all depending on who goes to the bathroom. Because if you go to a place where, the guys
I'm just
are
glad
not
that we're
drunk,
kicking this off at this topic.
then you always have to go to the guy bathroom because it's cleaner. But when you go to a place where the guys are drunk, you just should not go to the guy bathroom.
So, considering that about 90% of the artificially intelligent like robots and stuff wandering around are going to be sex bots, I don't want them free to rape our children in the bathroom. You know they want to. They're programmed to want to. That's what they're for.
There's something magical about that room that just transforms their thinking.
Everybody walking into that room turns into a wannabe rapist. It's just a fact.
Cthulhu's BFF. Oh, Cthulhu's BFF. Yeah, I'd say that's spot on.
Oh, I don't even see the chat, so I have no idea what anyone's saying.
I'm horrible at looking at it. I typically just completely forget about it.
Yeah. Oh wow, there's like a lot of chat.
Actually, yeah. But if you look, no, we don't have a super chat. But when there's a super chat, it will actually pop up on the thingy with a little zombie running around.
In theory, it should anyway. But we have had an awful lot of issues. So,
hey, I could donate to myself.
Try that, yeah. No, but no, because like those, I think like 2-3 streams ago, they started to donate on YouTube, and I found it kind of like, because I missed that stuff. And so now I just put it up that it pops up straight into my face. There's a zombie. You know, if there's anything attracting my attention, it's a zombie. So, yeah. I don't miss it anymore.
Oh, man.
So since we don't have any, like, actual conversation happening, how about this? You don't know for a fact that other people are actually even there, right? You can't know for absolute certain that you're not just a brain in a vat. And yet you respect the rights of other people just because you're like, well, better safe than sorry here.
Right.
More or less. So how about that with robots too? If they come up and talk to you and they're like, hey, what's up, dude? I'd kind of like to not be like put in a concentration camp. Would that be cool with you if we don't do that? Maybe you should just go like, well, I don't know for a fact that you're actually conscious or you're actually like, a sentient being that's in front of me. But, I'll just err on the side of caution here, just so that I don't risk being a complete asshole for no real reason.
I think that's a little bit of an understatement. You're an asshole if you put someone in a concentration camp.
Well, they have pleasant bathrooms in the concentration camp. I'm not a monster. They have like premium toilet paper. They have those urinals that wash your dick.
Oh my god.
You ever heard of those? Never heard of those?
No. What is this?
Oh yeah, that's a bit much for me, honestly. I think you'd have to like pull the whole rigging down to use those, because otherwise you just end up with the big wet patch, and that just bothers me. Jeez. I guess people would get used to it over time. Like if you came out of the bathroom with a wet patch, they'd stop thinking you pissed yourself and just kind of go, oh yeah, oh good, you're nice and clean now. I respect your hygiene. Sorry, kind of got us off track.
I DM'd you a comic, link to a comic that is about, literally it's about zombies, but it's a sort of a new common experiment in like thought experiments in philosophy, where you try and think about different forms of rights. And the idea is you try and remove the sort of human biases in your thinking a little bit by pretending they're zombies. And so it's just like a humorous take on that. If you feel like posting it, I DM'd it to you.
But what do you mean you pretend there's like, why would zombies have rights? Aren't it depends on the kind of zombie, doesn't it?
Sure, but it's more like it's not limited to rights either. It kind of like thinking like, how would you treat? It's not just it's like you can use it for all kinds of stuff. It's basically the idea is just you remove the potential for human bias, because like you're prone to thinking of fellow humans. It's very easy to empathize with them, etc., because you know what it's like to be human. So it's like, okay, here's this foreign thing that behaves extremely similar, but it's not quite me. I don't know. But
zombies don't behave extremely similar. Zombies just wander around trying to eat stuff.
Yeah, it's fictional, that's what makes it useful. But it's funny because in the comic, Dan Dennett is just like mocking the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
The thing is, do zombies really, like, are they conscious? Do they actually realize they're there?
Well, they don't exist. Let's start with that.
Yeah. You can make them whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was that movie that was like a love story with a zombie, right?
Oh yeah, what was it? I liked that movie. It was kind of like a little
I
bit
never saw
geared
it,
towards
but I
a
heard
younger
about
crowd,
it, or I
but
saw the trailer or something. And he was like thinking, he had like an inner monologue.
right.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a Romeo and Juliet, like really like lightly hinted at.
Mhm.
Oh man, what is that called?
I don't remember what it was called, either. But
But yeah, it can be whatever.
yeah, so I
It's
guess
like
you don't
he's
necessarily
just
know if the
thinking he
zombie's
can't just act
conscious.
it out.
Yeah. Cyphermans points out zombie ants actually exist.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do.
That's true. What's
It's like a
interesting is
fungus.
I was reading this paper that got published not that long ago about how it could be a possibility that what we think of as sort of what's in control of our thoughts or how we represent ourselves in the, from the internal thought to the external world. There's no actual executive function in it. So it's kind of like this just observer of your other thoughts.
Mhm.
And it was interesting because that would fit with that zombie pattern. So like the inner monologue, the guy is completely like aware of what he's thinking
But he's
sentience.
not
He
actually
just can't
performing any
express it
actions.
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like it starts off with like kind of goofy, fun type stuff, but then it's like, wait, this is actually pretty useful as like a thinking tool.
Mhm. Well, it's the same question as like, what rights does a person in a coma have, for example, like, you know, or somebody who's like severely mentally retarded or something.
Yeah.
You know, do they have consciousness in the same way we think about it? Well, we kind of just go on the assumption that, well, maybe not the person in a coma, but like you kind of treat them the same way, like you respect the humanity of it, I guess.
Right. Yeah. So like right out of high school, my best friend was in the military and he was in a Humvee accident and he went into a coma for months.
Mhm.
And so like that really made me think about a lot of this stuff. Just from the very basic thing that a lot of people think like, can they hear us? Are they thinking and we just don't know it? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Is there any like uh, information on that? I've never looked into that.
I'm not super heavily versed in that, but like I've only recently started looking at like really technical stuff because it's kind of like above my head sometimes. But when it comes to philosophy of mind, that pairs very well with neuroscience. That's like it's a really common combination now coming out of universities is where someone will either double major in philosophy and neuroscience or they'll do philosophy of mind and then go to grad school for neuroscience or vice versa. Because the thinking tools, you need to think like super abstractly to try and understand the data you're handed from something like neuroscience. So it works really well, but that's not where I kind of fall in things. So I've looked at it casually as an interest, but
Yeah.
the thing I was talking about just a few minutes ago was probably the most interesting thing that I've read that I felt like I understood in a while. Where you're basically an observer of yourself, and then you have to sort of relay that information, but you can't like act on it. That
Right.
has like interesting implications on concepts like free will too. It's like you kind
Yeah.
of have it, but you don't.
Yeah, it's almost a matter of definition
Right.
at a certain point with free will. Because like, I find this issue a lot because I make a lot of videos about religion, and you have people, the religious people, they have this idea that's almost like this transcendent soul that doesn't even obey the laws of reality, essentially. It just, at least within the universe, it like does its own thing completely separate from physics and everything. And then they say, well, if you're confined by the laws of physics and your brain is just a computer, essentially, you have no free will. And it's like, well, that's a definition of free will, I guess. But there's another definition where it's like, do you have the sensation of it and that kind of thing.
Sure.
So it's a little bit I don't know. It's almost just a matter of how you think about it. It's what perspective you come at it from.
Yeah, it's so the reason I keep bringing up Dennett is because he does philosophy of mind, Daniel Dennett. Common example he likes to use when he's talking about free will is he gives two potential situations. They're both lotteries, and in example A, the ticket is chosen after everyone's purchased their tickets, and it's announced. And then in lottery B, the winning ticket is chosen beforehand, and it's like secured in a vault or something like that. And then, they look afterward. And so like those are the parallels between like, you sort of have your free will to like use whatever you want, like grab a ticket whenever you want. Or the second one where it's like more like determinism, where it's already set before, and it doesn't really matter what happens after it because it's still going to be that result. Right. But it doesn't matter. It's like they're both fair lotteries, so it's kind of like you still get the same result. So who cares?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately, in your day-to-day life, it has no impact which one it is.
But I do think it does have an impact, for example, for like imprisonment and stuff. Because if you assume that someone has basically no control over himself, then you would potentially treat him very differently than, for example, if you would think that the person does.
Yeah, it has an impact on how you consider criminal justice.
Yeah, I was just
you come at it more from a thing of like rehabilitation and the safety of other people, more than from a thing of like, let's just throw this guy in jail and torture him and punish him and make his life a living hell because he had the free will and he was a bastard.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was just going to say. Is that's one of the first things that made me change my approach to the justice system instead of retributivism.
Yeah, the eye for an eye thing doesn't work out quite as well at that point.
Yeah. It's like, no, the point is to just separate them until you feel it's safe to reintroduce them into society again, not to punish. And yeah,
but is there a potential danger where when you go, for example, too far into the direction of everyone kind of can't really control themselves, that, because we do need a certain amount of at least the feeling that we can, control ourselves. Like, for example, if, how should I say, if we go to vote and we have absolutely no own thinking, no individualism, no nothing of our own, then it wouldn't really make sense to go to vote because we would vote like that either way because we're just machines that are programmed that way. So that would be completely, in one direction. And then, for example, this whole, that was something that I found a bit irritating about Black Lives Matter, where they were like, the people who do the crime have absolutely no control by themselves. It's all just the police and the history and everything. And the reason it really annoyed me is if you go back in time a couple of decades, they had a very, very low crime rate. So between then and now, something changed to make them be more criminal. And I don't think that that you can push it on, all this, racism in society, because nowadays there is much less racism than there used to be in the 70s, for example.
Yeah, I kind of think of like, I mean, that's a whole can of worms we could open up. It would take forever to talk about. Not that I wouldn't want to talk about it, but I guess it just, what comes to mind is kind of what we just said, where it doesn't really matter. Like, it doesn't matter if they can control it or not. The overriding concept is they're not safe to be in society at the current moment. As far as you can rehabilitate them and reintroduce them successfully, and there you go.
Yeah.
No, but like that was for pointing to. Imagine if you think that everything is just like, machine controlled, we don't really have any control of our own. There will be a lot of people who then have this idea of you don't need to be in control of yourself. We control you because you can't control yourself anyway. That kind of thinking.
Well, you can't control yourself either, Mr. Ruler Person. So maybe
that's what I was just going to say that. How are you going to control someone else if you can't even control yourself?
Yeah, it's like, oh no, we're the special ones. Actually, they'd probably be like, we're the priests. we have a direct line to God, which gives us a free will that you don't have.
Yeah.
We'll have to have a reformation.
Yeah, we're the prophets, and God gives us a intravenous free will. Injects it straight into our nutsack. Just like that. That's probably what you know you would get people saying that, honestly.
I can see it.
Well, not the nutsack part, but the rest of it.
I don't
get
know.
people posing.
The nutsack part.
Well, depends what their goal was, I guess. It'd be like, you can drink some intravenous free will straight from my nutsack if you want, pretty lady.
Oh my god. That's there's a pickup line for you. Want some of my free will?
Yeah. This will really open your mind. Ooh. Yeah.
What's interesting though is so like because I like then it's sort of like his stuff is sort of my wheelhouse, so I understand it better than say straight up neuroscience.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of his stuff, read a lot of his stuff. But another thing he talks about is there's been several studies showing that even though people don't truly have free will in the sense that most people think of it, if you tell people they don't have free will, they violate social norms and laws more than if you don't. So it's this really weird, paradoxical. It's unethical to tell someone the truth because it could have a negative impact on your society and other people.
You know, I almost think though that you have to start like partially the thing is that we train people to expect certain things. It's kind of the same thing with like religion, and you know, you expect to have this daddy figure watching over everything you do and punishing you if you do bad.
Right.
And so you're going to sort of live your life with that expectation, even if you stop believing it, possibly, or you might be more likely to. I just feel like it's like if we started out from a blank slate, would that be still the case, or is it more a remnant of that kind of thought process?
Yeah, I can see the similarity. I'm just wondering, like, okay, so most of the experiments that I've looked up that have been conducted on this, everyone leaves the room, and the researchers intentionally set it up so that the subject can cheat if they desire. So it's not like people are in front of them or watching them, and they know they might be caught. It's like you have the option to cheat, and we won't know. And they still do it, like significantly different. So it's really interesting. I'm not sure.
I think what might be there is when you tell them you don't have a free will, they take that as an excuse.
Right. That's what they're thinking. I'm not responsible for things.
Yeah, but I think that there is a disconnect there. Because just because you don't have free will doesn't mean that you're not responsible necessarily. Because, yeah, sure, you don't have free will, but if you stick to certain rules and if you stick to a certain norm, that has A, advantages for you, and B, it's easier for you to handle. Like if in a society everyone sticks to a particular rule, then you know you will have a positive feedback, and they know that they will have a positive feedback from you. No matter if you have control or not. Like if you have this excuse of, it's like with being an alcoholic, you know, it's like, yeah, well, God allows me to drink, therefore I drink. It's because you push it on someone else. You don't take responsibility for it. But I don't necessarily think that if you raise someone to still take responsibility for themselves, even though they know that they don't really have what we would consider, you know, how would you say that? Control over yourself, like
self-control.
Yeah. Even if you don't have that, but you still have the responsibility to make sure that you kind of do as you're supposed to do. I think if from beginning on the people would learn that, they wouldn't really even have that problem or the dichotomy.
Yeah. What was interesting
like
to me about the
Christians who tell you
studies,
if there is no God, then we all go rape around. Probably some of them will actually go rape around if they believe there is no God.
what was what was interesting to me about the studies, just from a sociological perspective, is because the subject was alone, and they knew that they were alone and not being watched.
Hey,
It kind of
look at this.
removed
What?
all like social pressure.
Apparently, hold on. DKK. I don't know what that is.
PKK.
Oh,
No, Paul Rasmussen.
hi.
See?
Ah.
Donated, whatever.
Donated through Super Chat. You got to read the messages too.
Yeah.
You should
you.
have your Super Chat open and your everything streamlined.
Yeah,
so that you
I
can
just saw
see,
the blue.
like.
Just put up. See here, love you guys and mistress.
Yeah, you should
We
have.
love you too.
How do you? There we go.
Just
Pop
open
up
up
chat.
a window with your Super Chat, and
There we go.
sorry, we kind of interrupted you, but she was.
Oh, that's okay.
This.
I figured it rated the window with the pop up.
Like, it pops up
That's
here.
much easier.
It pops up here.
So yeah,
Yeah,
thank
but
you.
you still have to like check the messages, so you should have like the screen open, the Super Chat window.
Yeah, I got it now.
You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah.
In your events or whatever, you should have.
I did the pop out live chat.
Like there should be one specifically only for Super Chat.
Oh.
Okay.
And also your Streamlabs sort of pseudo Super Chats.
I think I just used it.
This works because it like
Because
shows
that
like
doesn't show messages.
this.
The point of Super
so,
Chats is the messages, not the pop-up. You see?
It says love you guys and mistress.
Yeah. We're new. We don't know what we're doing.
He got to do that twice, so it's okay.
I think I can see it. It like
Go
shows
to
up a
Creator
different
Studio.
color and then it says it underneath. Okay. What was I saying now? Oh, so
go community maybe.
I find like the reason I find this study interesting on free will from a sociological perspective is because
Right, yeah, okay. Can you say again? She was
Sure.
yelling over you.
So like about these studies that I'm talking about with the free will and telling people about it, what I find very interesting from a sociological perspective is because these people are told they're not being watched and they really aren't, it removes any sort of social stigma or pressure that you would feel otherwise, like if you were, say, in public trying to go on the sly or something like that.
Yeah.
So that really it helps eliminate a lot of that. So that was interesting to me. And it made me think of, I don't know, so like this is more of the ethical approach than something as specific as cheating, but because Plato has a relative named Glaucon, and this is in his Republic, but there's a ring in the story that if you put it on, you're invisible. Sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
But the question is the wearer of this ring still an ethical person while they're wearing it? Like, will they still behave ethically even though they can't be seen or caught? And to me, that's what the internet is. It's like, it has that same effect of if you want, you can be completely like anonymous and behave however you wish. And so what do you do with that?
Yeah, there are definitely some people who will go around and be complete dickheads.
But I have to say,
it's surprisingly a low number, though.
Yes.
I think like most of the people that we know on the internet seem like they're not going around trying to dox people and shit like that for the most part.
Right.
In fact, they'll turn around and condemn doxing, even if they're just like a screen name.
Yeah.
For example, even if it's someone that they don't agree with,
To me, this is
like
why, like, I look at, like, I'm really interested in this. So one of the emerging subdisciplines of sociology is digital or technological sociology. And it looks at things like social media or like what we were just talking about, human behavior online versus offline. And that fascinates me because it's very, very much like raw human behavior. It's like you still have this ability to interact with other humans, but you're not really responsible in a lot of the same ways you would be outside of that. It makes me think of road rage incidents.
Yeah.
It's like a more extreme version of that, right? You're just like temporarily in front of these people, this audience, and you think you can just behave however you want, and you won't have to deal with them ever again. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's interesting. What are raw humans like? no social stigmas or pressures, hardly.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of scary.
Although they do tend to emerge over time, though. Even the anonymous people, right? They're anonymous. Like, I mean, I guess there's the people who like just make a new Twitter egg account. I guess there's no more Twitter egg, but you know, they make a new egg account every day, and just keep fucking with people every day. They're those people. But then there are other people who have an anonymous account. Like, I mean, I had that for years.
Right.
You know, where you're anonymous. I'm still sort of anonymous, not really, but like, you know, people make anonymous accounts, but they keep the same account, and then over time they start to like, basically, they start to act like normal people, basically.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Yeah, because it's like that is your name now. That is your identity now. Your anonymous identity is still an identity, which is kind of interesting.
Very cool. I never thought of that.
Because nobody actually knows who you are, but they still know
you're
who
stuck
you are online.
Right.
Which is,
very cool.
You be treated like a dickhead. You know, online.
You start forming your own from scratch.
Yeah. I mean, I will agree that there's probably an unusually large number of people online who are absolutely willing to act like complete douchebags. But, you know.
But they're in real life as well. They have douchebags in real life.
There are douchebags. I just think it's probably people who are outright willing to be complete assholes to your face. It's probably a bit higher on that. I would maybe agree.
I think maybe just it reveals your true character to a more extreme extent.
Yeah, maybe.
To be fair, I kind of like that about the internet, because it's so much easier to know what you're dealing with.
People are so much less false.
Yeah.
Yeah. If people are assholes, they're just going to be assholes, and you go, oh, okay, you're an asshole then. All right. Then you can just ignore them.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice heads up.
It is. You don't have to find out 5 years down the road when they actually fuck you over by like stealing your computer.
Right.
I have a problem with that in general, because, you know, I prefer to know that I'm dealing with a nasty person and then just deal with that person. When I have this sensation that I'm dealing with a person where I can't be sure because the person is like, you know, socially nice and whatever, and you constantly have this feeling like, is this person false? Is this person real? What is this person really about? That is for me so much worse than just being like, okay, this person's an asshole, this person is not. This is how you deal with them.
For autistic freaks like us, it's so annoying when somebody has a mask, right? This like fake smile, and they're like, oh, hello, how are you? Oh, what have you been doing? Oh, that's great. Oh, wonderful. And you're like, I can tell that you fucking hate me.
I already want to punch you.
Say it. Just fucking say it. Hey, what are you doing? But you're playing all nice. And it's like, there's a social stigma against being an asshole. It's like, but you want to. I know you want to.
Let your inner asshole out.
Yeah, exactly.
Be
yourself, man. Don't be an asshole in private. Be an asshole in public. Let us all know.
I wonder if that's like there's a tie-in with the internet, like online dating. So like you can very easily screen out the douchebags like right off the bat.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I'm sure it's much easier that way. Yeah. Anyone with a dick pic or like their shirt off, for the women anyway. If the women have their shirt off, you might kind of take a moment to pause. But yeah.
You should also have your streamlined formation just
Seriously, slightly over here.
Over tab. Put it on the other one, on the other window.
Yeah.
Because then it's just there. And if anything, you know. This is all new. This is the second time with like OBS and Streamlabs and all this stuff, and it's very complicated. We're not streamers.
Just from streams I've done before, even with people that like use that stuff a lot, it's still difficult.
Well, yeah, like
issues with OBS all the time.
Especially to like get all the audio working, like all that stuff set up and working properly. Especially when people use Skype, to be honest. Like if you're using Hangouts or whatever, it's a little bit better, but
right,
Skype is a nightmare, no matter what you do.
Yeah, no, that's why I do the Hangouts, or like whatever they call it now, YouTube Live instead of Hangouts on Air. That's why that's what I prefer to do.
Like Hangouts on Air, I kind of had to rebuild my computer because the motherboard went all weird and fucky and started giving weird errors. But so I put a bunch of new parts in and stuff, including the motherboard and the CPU and all that. But at least before that, and I haven't tried it since, I kept getting blue screens from Hangouts. Like weird. Hangouts on Air.
Huh.
It was at random times. Like it would work for like an hour, and then somebody new would come in, and I would just suddenly blue screen out.
Weird.
And that was kind of confusing. And I'd come back in and I'd be like, so did you do anything weird? Like turn on your webcam or like do anything like this? And they're like, no, I didn't do anything. Okay, well.
Interesting.
Something is working interestingly there. I never did diagnose it because it was too intermittent. Like
maybe
I never got any good logs about it either. Like even when I turned on the logging, it never had anything useful to say. So
sentience. Sentient.
Yeah.
We got a bit of topic there.
I haven't had enough coffee. It's kind of hard to stay focused on anything today.
You want some streaming?
No, that's not going to help. That is definitely.
I forgot about that.
Saint-Rémy.
Yeah.
So I guess we should, like you said the same, should do some definitions.
Fun.
She says you think about this a lot. So
But
do I?
Well, you do. You just don't admit it.
I ramble when I'm half asleep, and then she goes, "Oh wow, you're like thinking about things." And I'm like, "No, I'm like talking in my sleep to you."
Truth is out.
No, but like the whole
I don't
thing
know.
about
I think self-awareness is probably up there. There's like 2 or 3 main things, but I would say self-awareness is the biggest thing that makes up sentience. Which fits nicely with the sort of paper stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I guess self-awareness makes sense as the baseline, but yeah, that's tricky to figure out because, like you're saying, with the zombie guy from the movie, self-aware apparently, but also completely unable to express it in any way.
Yeah, it's like an epistemology where it's like you want to know, like when you're talking about what it is to know things. If someone else knows something, you can never truly know that.
Yeah,
like,
I made this video.
To that.
I made this video to Andre Dormand, and he was talking about how bacteria are conscious, and he kind of just took this as a given. Bacteria are conscious, and therefore, God exists for some reason, and he never really backed that up. But I basically was like, look, bacteria. I don't really see how you think they're like what leads you to believe they're conscious, right? I mean, as far as we can tell, it's just a chemical reaction, a relatively simple chain of events, right?
Yeah,
that's making a flagella just wiggle around,
right?
Like detector at one end, little bit of circuitry, sort of, and then flagella wiggles around at the other end and makes it move away. And I was like, well, what makes you think that's conscious? And somebody in my comments, I think it was on my Patreon comments or something, but they were like, well, what makes you think they're not? Maybe they are. You don't know. And I'm like, well, okay, so how would we identify that then, right? Because that's the question. Because maybe they are. I don't fucking know. Maybe consciousness really is like some ethereal thing that's assigned to every living being in the universe.
And they just can't express it.
Yeah, but at that point, it's like almost outside of our ability to even identify, because it's probably like outside of the physical functionality of the universe. So how the fuck would we identify that?
Yeah, or like people, what is that called? Something about like when they're something about being imprisoned, where they can't move. They're like completely paralyzed, but they're alive.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what the actual name of that is. Oh, by the way, the name of the movie is Warm Bodies. I just thought of it.
Ah, okay.
For anyone who wants to know.
8.14, he says, to be fair to Andre, that's how it makes up human consciousness. We're basically like just like a very huge giant.
Hello? I cannot hear anyone. Oh, there, you're kind of coming back. Okay, I can hear you now. Yeah, I can hear you. Hello? You cannot hear me. Hello?
Yeah, do snowball. There you go. Hello?
Hi,
Test. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Yes, I can.
Okay, well, I cannot hear myself. Can the
Okay.
people in the stream hear me?
Whoa, what's going on here?
They're saying they can only hear me.
Yeah. Something's wrong. Okay, wait, I can...
Is this working
Yeah,
now?
you sound way different now, like the feed.
Okay.
Is there another mic
It's good.
source?
I just turned it up.
Okay. Okay. How does it
See?
sound? How does it
See?
sound now?
I'm muted.
But you're the one with the mic attached. You can't be muted.
Someone, okay, they're saying they can hear you now.
What?
You're just quiet.
The mic is attached to you, not to me. Yeah, now it should work, right?
Whoa, got some weird echo there.
No, then you have to mute yourself.
How about now?
Can you hear us?
Yes. Everyone's saying they can hear us. It's just that, like it was before, where he's just a little quiet because she's in the background.
How about now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Okay, great.
Okay.
We were talking about something, but I don't remember now. Oh yeah,
Well,
the person's comment. The person's comment where they said that
Oh, right.
I'm hearing myself like crazy now. This is horrible.
Well, that's why I muted myself before and not you, because then I can hear it, and it's still fine.
Just mute the individual tab on the browser. Like if you right click on it.
No, if you go and you're on the snowball.
Mm-hmm. I'm not on the snowball. You're on the snowball.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
No, you're on the snowball.
Anything?
You know, the thing is, we're pretty much. Let's just swap these here. There. Give.
You know, why am I hearing myself here? This is weird.
Yeah, obviously you're hearing yourself because you're going through my mic. So now it should be fine.
Okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
I can hear us. I can hear me. Everything's good.
Okay, whatever.
I think
I'm very confused how the hell this is working when both of us are muted, but okay.
But I'm not.
Oh,
Look.
You're not now? Okay.
Look.
You said you were. Anyway.
Yeah, I was, and it was going through you, and now suddenly it goes through me.
Okay. Oh, no wonder I sound so fucking loud. You have the thing. Can you turn that down a bit? Because it's blasting my eardrums out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait. If I turn this more silent, does the thingy on YouTube go more silent?
No, I don't think so. Well, maybe. I don't know.
That's the problem.
I don't know, but it hurts my ears.
Says this stream is low energy.
Yeah.
It's a Trump stream.
We're a bunch of losers. We're low energy. Okay. Finally, maybe.
Oh,
this
locked
works.
in
I still
syndrome.
hear myself,
Yeah.
but fuck it. I'll just deal with it. The thing about, to be fair to Andre, that human consciousness appears to be just chemical, reactions and everything too, just like bacteria. Yes. The difference is that as a human, I can experience the fact that I have consciousness at least. I infer that other people have it. I don't know it for absolutely certain. But I don't have any data that shows that about bacteria at all. They don't show the responses that I would associate with an entity that I know is conscious. So what leads anyone to believe that they are? That's the point.
Right.
Yeah.
And like you said before, it's kind of a definitional thing too. It makes me think of so like I don't know if it's like this in Canada, probably not, but there's certain parts of the United States where it's common, like when you're driving, to see anti-abortion signs
Mm-hmm.
that'll say something about abortion stops a beating heart or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think to myself, like, what does a beating heart have to do with it?
Yeah, abortion stops the self-aware brain.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like maybe it's something like that, where it's like, I don't know, even the guy you're talking about before, it's like, oh, it's kind of moving, it looks like it has agency of some.
Yeah, but that's not really enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should look into it.
Yeah, it's like, I can feel self-awareness, Other people express self-awareness, whether they have it or not is up for debate, I suppose, but,
yeah.
Bacteria show no sign of it that I can identify anyway. So if
I
somebody's
guess...
going to make that claim, like, the guy didn't even try to justify it in that video. He just threw it out as if it was an accepted fact, right? Like, that was his basis
just
for his
true.
argument that God exists. So it's like, atheists already agree with me on this. Bacteria are conscious. They have self-awareness. So starting from that point, let's argue that God exists from there.
It makes me think of, like, whenever I'm sort of analyzing that kind of stuff and they start a sentence with, well, as everybody knows, like, that's a sign that some bullshit's about to come out of their mouth.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it's asked, did we ever define consciousness? Is it a response to stimuli as well as self-awareness? Is there something more to it?
I don't think the stimuli response is necessary. So, like, kind of like we were talking about before with someone in a coma, they're not going to respond to external stimuli, but they're still very, very much conscious. Like, they're aware of their executive functions in their brain. They just can't do anything with it.
Yeah, they could be laying there philosophizing the whole time.
Exactly. You could be literally an armchair philosopher.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So, I mean, obviously self-awareness is a big one. Isa, do you remember when we were talking a little bit about this before, we came up with like 2 other ones that were really good.
2 other what?
We had a real short list of what we thought it would constitute, maybe not consciousness, but sort of like an AI type thing, which I guess isn't too far from the same thing. There were like 2 or 3 things we came up with that seemed to pretty much cover it, and so one of them was what we're talking about right now. And I can't think of what else we have. They were pretty good. Self-awareness. Oh.
The illusion that you are in control of yourself, maybe?
I think that was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
To function on your own like that. Oh, I know. I don't know if this is one of them, but I remember suggesting that maybe. So, like the Turing test that everyone's familiar with, the problem I have with that is it's unidirectional. So it's like the person can't tell if they're interacting with a machine or a person. But I think it should be bidirectional. So, like, the person and the non-person can't tell that they're interacting with the non-person. Mm-hmm. And vice versa. That's what I think. Like, that, to me, that's what would be convincing of, okay, this is a sentient agent of some kind.
But wouldn't that kind of like, because right now, because of the fact that we are not even close, isn't that where like, we have to use humans because computers just don't do the trick yet?
Yeah, that really, I know you and I have talked about this before. It like drives me nuts when people compare computers to humans or use humans as a model for AI. I don't know. Yeah, to me, it just seems like we should start from scratch. I always think of, if you've ever read Neuromancer by William Gibson, it always makes me think of Wintermute, the sort of intelligence, whatever you want to call it, that's in that story. If you haven't read that book, it's awesome. By the way, it's a classic. But makes me think of that.
Years and years ago, but I don't remember really anything about it.
It's interesting. So it's not very specific on what this entity is sort of composed of, but the way it interjects into the story, you kind of get this quasi-human feeling, even though you know it's not, just because of the context of the story. So it's weird. At least for me, I felt myself sort of empathizing with it over certain parts of the novel, but even knowing full well that it's not a human being. So it's kind of like, it's a little confusing. So it's like, what makes me do that? Is it because my brain's pattern seeking and so this thing's behaving similarly to like a fellow human, or like why do I go there with my mind?
There's one more thing. Like, who was pointing this out? John Hightower. It's actually very easy to fool a human. Like, you could be very easily having a machine and just like spew out random nonsense, and the human still would think it's a human. Like, it takes humans a while to not see the human as a human if the human is not a human.
There's a reason people fall for fucking chatbots.
Right. That is a great example. Oh my God.
I mean, not every human falls for them, but an
But
unfortunately high number of people do.
Enough of them do that so that they continue to exist.
Right.
Yeah.
Nicholas says, I liked Altered Carbon more than Neuromancer. I haven't checked that out. Snow Crash was pretty good. That's another one compared to it.
Maybe the people who fall for chatbots actually have like an amazing life. Like maybe the people who approach them are like, hey, you want to see my titties? And they're like, yeah, I want to see your titties. And then it just goes great, and they have a wonderful evening. And then they see the chatbot, and it's like, hey, I'm 18 and female from Orlando. You want to see my titties? And it's like, yeah, okay, sure, yeah, great. This is a normal encounter.
But
maybe that's just their life.
Like if they completely fall for it and no one ever tells them and they never figure out it's a chatbot, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, I'm in a relationship. I've been in a 6-month relationship.
With this hot chick, 18.
Yeah, I haven't seen her titties yet, but she tells me she's going to show them to me real soon. Just after another couple of contributions of $18.99.
That'd be funny if that were the new standard, because that'd be an easy bar to hit, just like fool humans. The goal of AI is no longer to be sentient, it's just to fool people.
Yeah.
Well, AI presumably will have a massive advantage over humans because it doesn't have the weaknesses of wanting to see the titties. But it'll know. It'll know that we have that. And it can use that. It can take over the world with that.
Yeah.
That's the most dangerous thing about it.
I'm not sure, Logicked, if you listened to some of the past streams that Ethan and I did, but one of the things I was talking about is I don't think, like when I think of AI, so like when I look at the current pace at which it's progressing technologically, like with our ingenuity, and sort of how it can't keep up with sort of integration of technology in our lives, like that's way faster. I don't think when I think of AI, I don't think of it as a separate thing from humans. I think of it as a sort of merger of humans and tech until you can't tell. There's no like clear line. It's sort of this blend of human, non-human.
Well,
Like
a
to me,
cyborg.
that's where it's gonna go. Yeah, to me that's where I see it's going.
You know, I had a God, I keep hearing myself in this thing. Anyway, I'll just take the headphones off for a second. So I had this conversation a while ago where someone was saying that they would never like upload their if there was like the option somehow to upload their consciousness into a computer to live forever, right? They said they wouldn't do it because that's essentially, you know, the copy lives but the original dies. So the consciousness over there that you're not experiencing, I mean, a copy of you is experiencing it, but
Right.
you, as you are right now, are not experiencing it. So it's not really like you're living forever. It's like somebody else just like you is living forever. Which kind of reminds me of the movie The Prestige, where you have the guy. I mean, spoiler warning, I guess, for a movie that's however many years old. But like, you have the guy who creates the machine that duplicates himself, and he does the magic trick on stage. And one copy of himself dumps into a tank and drowns, and the other copy of himself gets teleported across the room and like does the closing to the magic trick. But he never knows if he's going to be the guy in the tank or the guy across the room. If he's going to be the continuation of the consciousness, or if he's going to be the dead one. It's that kind of thing. But then I said, well, what if instead of just duplicating yourself into a computer, what if you started just one by one replacing your neurons with a neuron that does exactly the same input and output, but mechanical, right?
Yeah, it's like the human version of the ship Theseus.
Yeah, very gradual. Then what? And that's a harder question to answer for someone who's outright like, no, I would never put my consciousness in a computer. Well, by the end of it, you have.
Right.
But I don't know. That I guess maybe they would do that. But that's kind of like
it's a
I think that's sort of close to what you're talking about with the merger. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's very similar because there's no clear line. It's a composition issue, which is like an object composition issue, which is what that's what I wrote my senior capstone on.
Mm-hmm.
So I've brought this example up a few times before, but it's a very simple one. So let's say someone commits a murder with a knife, and they're not found out, so they still have, they're still out in society. And it's a knife they use for other things. They like it. So they think to themselves, you know what, this handle's kind of shitty. I want a new handle. And so they work on it, like they assemble it so there's a new handle. And then like a couple months later, they're like, this blade's getting really dull. I could get a better one made of better materials. I'm going to replace it. So they take the handle that they made before and make the new blade. So now, is there still a murder weapon?
I don't
Doesn't
know how
seem to
murder
be.
was necessary to that example, but yeah, I understand that.
Well, I'm just thinking like if you take it to trial, would they be able to present it as a murder weapon?
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't think they would be able to because it's not identical, so they wouldn't be able to say like anything about it, right? They wouldn't even be able to identify it.
Did you just fuck the prosecution? But
I mean, well, what would they say?
Like,
Like, yeah, we have a knife that this guy owns. It has no indication of having a similar blade to the weapon that was used to create this wound.
Right.
But it's a knife, though, so how are you going to present that in a trial? What the fuck?
But then if
There you
you
go.
push that
Get out of jail free, you murderers.
But then, it would be like if you go a step further and you use this, like, with the brain, it's like, okay, if we're not sure that the brain that wakes up tomorrow is the same brain as the brain that goes to sleep today, at which point is the brain that goes to sleep today no longer responsible, or the brain that wakes up tomorrow no longer responsible for what the brain did today? Like, at which point have we replaced so much of our matter that our brain is no longer the brain of the murderer of the person?
Yeah, so I think like it's not so much of my position on identity is people are their thoughts, nothing more. Their collection of thoughts. That's what makes them who they are.
Thoughts and
But
memories and stuff, I guess.
Yeah, right. Sure. But those are kind of like sub-classifications of thoughts.
Are they really?
Sure, I would say that. Like if you have an experience, I mean, it's what you think is what I'm saying. So like you're storing that as a memory, just as in thought form.
I mean, a memory, isn't that more like part of the? Isn't the thought sort of a thing that your brain is doing, whereas the memory is like part of the actual physical structure of your brain? I mean, you're not necessarily recalling the memory.
It isn't. Yeah, well,
But
it
I
is in the sense in that that's what it takes to retain it.
I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree that it is. It is in the sense that that is what it takes to retain the sort of past experience. But that kind of plays into where I was going is, to me, it's less of a object composition thing. So like if you're replacing something slowly over a period of time, it's more of a temporal thing. So at what time, T1 versus T whatever, the difference between the thing you're comparing at different points in time. That's what makes it, that's the question. Is it different? So to me, even when, I mean, this is more of sort of a, not really extreme, but uncommon view. Anytime you go to sleep and wake up, you're not the same person.
Right.
Or if you go to, let's say you learn something new, you're not the same person.
Right.
You're a different person. So I could agree with that from the sort of temporality angle. But as far as like because you're not really changing your physical composition a whole lot. It's kind of like if you looked at identical twins. Sure, they physically look the same and they're genetically, the same, but you wouldn't say that's the same person.
Right.
But I think if you look, because the brain constructs itself a lot with experience as well, the neuron connections and so on. So even if you have twins, they will have different neural connections. They will not be the
your
same.
experiences can shape your physical structure of your brain, sure. I think logic was that what you were trying to get at earlier?
I kind of blanked out for a minute. What were you,
Twins. Okay, imagine twins.
Yeah.
Twins with different experience have different neural connections.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, they're not really the same person.
Well, obviously, they're not. They're twins.
Yeah, but like generally saying, you cannot say, like, they are physically not the same. Even though they were born physically, identical, because of their experience, they're not the same. But that's partially a physical trait that you see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's maybe there's some kind of tie over with the thing we were talking about before there, where it's like you're wholly dependent on, whatever other person, like other than yourself, because you don't have access to sort of their experiences or their thoughts or memories. You're just sort of dependent on them to tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So like people that date close relatives, they can usually tell the difference. And it's like, well, why can they tell the difference, but someone who's never seen it before and is just introduced to them can't?
They can tell the
what about that?
between the twins, you mean? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's got to be behavioral, which means it's a personality thing, which means it's a thought experience thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
That's
why I think it comes down to content and consciousness has done it probably.
Partially it could also be the way they look. Like, identical twins can be identical, but if one is slightly more even than the other one, will look a bit more chubby, will have, I don't know, a mole here that the other one doesn't have or something like that. Those are things that a person, seeing them for the first time may not necessarily notice, but a person who sees them a lot will notice it and will use it to, differentiate between them, even though the person is not quite necessarily talking to them. Obviously, there is also, the way they behave, but I'm pretty sure that they have also, like, visual cues.
Yeah, it could be. I would think, like, so, like, even the way people react to certain, I don't know, like, let's say they eat a food they think is gross and they make a face. Like, it's not going to look the same on everybody. So, like, if you get used to things like facial expressions or just behavioral patterns, you could probably tell the difference too.
I feel like we're a bit off track because I'm not sure how this all relates to the human organic state here. That's what we're talking about, right? Ultimately, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah,
a mecho state.
Yeah. don't want those metal people in our country.
If we could teleport, would we use the same technology to remove cancer? I have no context for that. I'm sorry. Makes you wonder though. So like the comparison I was drawing earlier when you Logic were talking about the uploading of the consciousness type stuff with the ship of Theseus. Anyone that's not familiar with that analogy, the general idea is you have a ship. It's like an older one, so it's just made of like wood planks. And let's say, some of the planks start to rot, so you replace them, or for whatever reason, you're slowly replacing them, and then you're taking them away. So eventually, it's to the point where none of the components of the ship were the like sort of starting off point. Is it the same ship? And then on top of that, if you take the components that you removed from the ship and replaced and built another ship, is that other ship now the ship of Theseus? Like Theseus' ship?
It's almost purely a matter of opinion at that point.
Yeah.
Like, the thing is, there is no inherent ship.
Right, exactly.
It's just like, what do you feel like labeling the ship today?
Yeah. And it's almost exclusively temporal. So it's like one day, like a prior point in time, you might say something else, and it's not wrong. It's not factually incorrect. In the future, you might say something different, and you get the same result.
Well, it's the same thing as with the creationists when they look at the line of skulls from like early hominids all the way up to modern Homo sapiens. And there's like a piece changed, a little change to the shape of the skull, and a little change to the shape of the skull, and a little change, and a little change, and a little change. And at some point in the middle there, they'll all start disagreeing with each other about which ones are monkeys and which ones are people. Because it gets to be kind of a gray area when you start to get like the changes compounding over time.
Yeah.
It's a very similar thing, I think, to the ships.
I wonder if you could use stats like statistics to kind of narrow that down, because that's basically what you do.
68% of creationists think this one is a human.
No, so like statistically, 68% through the transition, it's human, something like that. Because that's kind of what you're doing anytime you run stats. It's not like here's a predictive answer or here's a definitive answer. It's like within this range, that's about what it is, and that's really good for things like spectrums. So I wonder if you could do that. I wonder if anyone's ever thought of that. Like if you were to line up, obviously it'd be a lot of work, but if you were to create a sort of timeline of hominid evolution, and then have subjects come in to where you get an idea of where it starts to be like, I can't tell, and then yes, definitely when it transitions.
May I point out something? Because
sure.
I just read the comment from AIDS again in the comment section where he was like, Logicked is the only person who manages to derail the conversation to the point where he can shit on creationists.
I just looked at that.
You're always on my mind, man. It's a long-term trauma. Just leave me alone.
I have to say, I'm not so sure that like, if we cannot find a proper definition for sentient beings for humans, how are we supposed to do that for robots? For any kind of other beings? And if you look at humans, there is such a diversity of weird people, from the most hyper-intelligent, logical thinking person to the most irrational human being that you can possibly find on the face of this earth. And somewhere there in between lies norm, and yet they are all supposed to be, humans and sentient and thinking and whatever. And then we're supposed to find like a point in time where something like a computer or whatever manages to be sentient, like or just like self-conscious. I mean, there's no way that we can pinpoint that down anywhere.
Yeah, it kind of has me slightly worried just from like the sociological perspective because this is similar. Like these could easily lead to similar mindsets that allowed for certain types of oppression and like enslavement in the past. So it's like you don't qualify as human, so it's okay if we do this to you. This thing that would otherwise be horrible if we did it to what we consider humans.
Oh, if you have like artificially intelligent robots, you're absolutely going to get that before it gets any better. I don't think there's any chance of that not happening.
Yeah.
Like you're going to start off with, oh, the robots are I don't know, taking our jobs.
Yeah.
But they're not people, so fuck it. Just throw them all in camps. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that
Well, what's even worse though is if right. But what could be even worse though is like if the way I look at it, it turns out to be the way it happens, where it's this merger, that's like that could be disastrous. Like, oh, you're not really human because you have all this like artificial replacement stuff, but you're not like 100%
Could be the other way.
one
Could
way
go
or another.
Gattaca. You know,
Right.
You're not really
That
fully
might
human
convince
because you're
people.
not modified.
Right. It could go either way.
Could go Deus Ex or
Although
go Gattaca.
it might work out though, because if the pace is slow enough, like that's anytime you want a society to accept something as a social concept, if it moves slow, you're usually fine. It's rapid change in either direction that is a problem. That's how you get the things like they're taking our jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah, but like, I mean, how many centuries are we trying to get people to accept each other, you know, and not discriminate based on, I don't know, skin color and stuff like that, and we still don't get it done? I mean,
Yeah, now let's introduce this other difference.
yeah.
That's a major difference, though. Like, that's like saying dolphins are people now. We found out that dolphins have societies and you know, rules within their tribes and whatever, and families, and love each other and everything. So we're gonna call them people now, and people would be like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
It's like we're gonna let dolphins vote. You know, it's kind of on that level of change. I don't think there's any amount of slowness that you can apply to that that's actually gonna make that work out well right away.
Well, the reason I'm thinking it could work is because you would still somewhat resemble humans. So, like, I don't know. Let's say I have my eyes replaced, and whatever it is, the way that
if you're
they're
a
made.
cyborg, yeah, maybe, okay, sure.
Yeah, like slowly but surely. That's what I'm talking about. Sort of like
Yeah,
it starts out as like enhancement.
I'm talking about like Roombas and those creepy robot dogs that do backflips.
No. Yeah, that would never fly. Those things are freaking spooky and awesome at the same time.
Yeah, no, they need to be destroyed. Absolutely wiped out.
There you go. Throw them in the pit.
Mm-hmm.
They're not humans. Fuck it.
Yeah, you know, Robot Wars?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we need to do. Turn them into gladiators for our amusement, because that's all they're good for. Yeah, no, if you just replace, like, if you have, like, Deus Ex, like, neural mods or something, I mean, people would probably maybe be okay with it. Unless you had, like, that big event where the guy tried to turn everybody into vicious killing machines with their neural mods.
That might be a problem.
Yeah, that seemed to cause some problems. Everything I know about AI I learned from video games.
Oh, yeah.
The funny thing though is like that's a reasonable conclusion or source I should say, because that those games were created by people, which means that's what they think of it.
Well, it's their sort of ideas about how people they're basically just coming up with ideas of how they think people might react to things like that. It's not like they're going, yeah, that's how I would react.
Sure. But I guess I'm thinking like they'd have to get that idea from another person.
Yeah, they basically have to base it on something that either happened in the past or that might possibly, potentially, likely be happening that they're aware of.
Yeah, it's basically like a metaphor for, or analogy to, like, racism and stuff is really what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Although I have to admit, like, they have more justification when it comes to the neuromod thing, Because if you have a bunch of neural mods in your brain that have like Wi-Fi and can be hacked and turn you into a vicious monster, that is a problem. Like
Yeah, this
maybe-
reminds me.
Hmm?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, like, maybe you actually should be evaluated your suitability for society with those things installed. Like,
Right.
if they're not going to be safe, get them the fuck out of your head.
Huh.
If
I'm
that's
glad you brought that
possible,
up because it made me think of something I wanted to say. Like, I don't know. I think it was like 2 or 3 streams ago with Ace. Was because we were kind of talking about a little bit. Dick Cheney, when he had his, I don't know if it was a full heart transplant artificially or if it was just a pacemaker,
Mhm.
but like most modern ones have like some type of Wi-Fi interface to like monitor how it's doing.
Okay.
Okay.
And he intentionally had it, he has to have it disabled so no one could like kill him through Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I probably would do that too.
Yeah. I'm like, who thought that was a good idea? This is like
If it
the
was just
Internet of Things
monitoring,
gone wild.
like if it's just monitoring, if it's purely like it puts out a signal that can be detected, just to
Right.
monitor the health, I could understand.
Right.
The problem is
Yeah,
that
this
you
is-
could actually access it, and that's when it gets
Yeah, if you can
shaky.
access it
Yeah.
and tell it to turn off, that's not so good.
And I mean,
Yeah, 'cause it's
nowadays-
like-
sorry.
It's the idea is like they don't have to open you back up if they need to make an adjustment.
Yeah.
Just put a hinge, like a fucking hinged panel.
Just give them a door.
Yeah, put a door on the chest. What the hell?
Supposed to be pretty cool to just walk around and beat your chest and it's like this metal clanging sound.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I'm Iron Man.
You
You
know,
get LEDs installed.
But yeah, I'm like,
but
just
either
from
way,
my background, as soon as I looked at that, I'm like, they do that? Like, who thought this was a good idea?
Yeah, no, especially for
Like, what the fuck?
especially for high profile people and stuff. It's really shitty idea.
It's like that's to me that should be like the pinned tweet on the Internet of Shit account. It's just like things that are ruined by technology.
Yeah.
imagine your heart starts to tweet, like you have a Twitter account for your heart pacemaker.
Actually, here's a interesting idea. What if they made it an artificial intelligent heart monitor that could access your pacemaker? It was your pacemaker, and it's like, oh, I have to speed up, oh, I have to slow down, oh, I have to tweet about the health of this guy, and it starts shit posting on Twitter. It's a sentient pacemaker. Would Dick Cheney have the right to remove and destroy it?
Huh. That sounds similar to abortion arguments.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. That's what I'm going for.
Huh. And that puts him in kind of a weird quandary.
It like starts malfunctioning, and he's like, "Yeah, I want to take it out." It's like, "But if you take me out, I'll die." You mother.
In the case of the life of its possessor, Dick, do you want to remove this? Is that okay with you morally?
Yeah, I don't even know the answer to that.
What if that heart you were given was ripped out of someone else? It was like illegally. It's like the equivalent of like being raped. Like, what do you do with that? Force him to take a different position. What's this one? Depends on if the pacemaker has a heartbeat to silence.
What was that?
Depends if the pacemaker
I'm just reading the chat. 8 says depends on if the pacemaker has a heartbeat to silence or not.
Yeah, because of your abortion signs.
if you're just
Yeah.
cold, if you're already a robot.
No, you see, it has to have a soul granted by God. If the signs in our area are anything to go by, it's more of a soul issue. Also, if it can reach out and grab your hand, if it has a little tiny hand with little tiny baby fingers, it can reach out and like grab your finger as you're trying to yank it out. I think that's the key. If you want the pacemaker species to survive without being just able to be abused and ripped out of its home and depowered and destroyed, you have to add like a little fleshy arm.
Yeah, and it grabs
When
you
you-
every time you try to get out.
Yeah, when you try to take it out, it just grabs your finger, grabs the doctor's finger, and takes a photo
And
and
there has
uploads
to
it
be
to
a-
Twitter immediately, and everybody knows.
There should be a speaker with a heartbeat sound too.
Yeah, it's like, look at this photo from my pacemaker webcam of my little fushy baby arm grabbing the doctor's finger, and there's the doctor's face and name tag in
He
the
wants
photo.
to kill me.
Print
Yeah.
He's a
print it out
murderer.
on like giant signs in protest with it. Like put it on billboards and shit.
Yeah,
We've gone too far. I don't know. Should we like? We should, with the rate at which it takes us to sort of develop this kind of technology, there's not going to be some kind of. I don't see there being some kind of like explosion where it's like, boom, full-fledged, sentient or intelligence out of nowhere, and it's like, oh shit, what do we do? We weren't planning for this. It's like going to progress on a slow enough timeline to where it's like, okay, here's some appropriate safety precautions or ethical precautions that we need to take at this point.
Are you sure though? I mean,
No, but
if
it just
you think
seems to me
about it, if
like
you think
that's
ab-
reasonable.
if you think about it, how long has the internet been around? And we still don't have any kind of proper, measurements and regulations for someone just, messing with it.
Uh-huh.
What if you had?
Well, there are.
Okay, no, go
There's
ahead.
sort
go
of
ahead.
like. Oh, sorry.
We're
Um,
kind of overlapping each other, I think. But go ahead.
Okay.
I have an
And Issa kind of disappears every once in a while, like half of what you say.
Yeah, she's
But I
gotta
got
get
it.
closer like this.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
This interests me because for a long time I was going to do medical ethics and I changed course in my career, but this is the sort of thing that would fall in that realm, and it's good. Yeah, there's the technological component to it, but ultimately it's about sort of medically what do you do with this, biologically. So like to me, I just look at any field of medicine as sort of like the social version of biology, because you're looking at how is it going to function in a society or a world or on its own, that kind of thing. So I'm just thinking about this from that perspective. It's like there are a lot of ethicists out there that will watch this very closely and be ready to yank your license to practice depending on what you do.
What if you have a artificially intelligent, like Siri style neuromod built into your brain, right? And it's kind of like it's kind of like Jarvis or something from Iron Man, where you like chit chat to it as you go through your day, but it's like in your brain.
Yeah.
And then it like takes control of your hand and kills someone.
Huh.
Do they put you in jail?
Yeah, it's weird. I guess you could like make the non-technological argument too, like if you're holding a knife in a room full of people and someone grabs your arm and jabs it into someone.
Well, I think they would be the one that's charged.
Right. So it's kind of like the same thing. It's just the physical presence is
but
different.
it's in your brain. Like they can't just. I don't know. What are they going to do
Like-
with it? Shut it down?
Yeah,
Murder
I don't know
it?
I don't know what the penalty would be, but it's kind of like
Death
similar in how
penalty?
they're overriding your autonomy.
It's the death penalty for Siri, but not for us. Fucking most bigoted thing ever.
Sentient lives matter.
Should we open up for other people?
Hmm?
Should we open up to let like other people in?
Open the floodgates. No, they put your brain off.
Does anyone
Says
want to
it.
join? No, I think it doesn't quite work too easily.
No, I don't think it works very easily at all.
No.
Get out of here. You don't get to join.
Yeah. No, I'm afraid we're slightly technologically, overloaded. We cannot make people join this time. I'm afraid.
We're technological retardeds, which really makes us completely unequipped to have this discussion at all.
I was just gonna say, ironically.
Yeah.
You know,
Yay, I'm gonna sound
there
like
are people on this earth who can barely count one and one together, and they still are allowed to put stuff on YouTube and make money off of it. So why aren't we allowed to talk about technology?
We're allowed, we just suck at it. You're allowed to suck. Nothing illegal about suckage.
the capacity to do so and the sort of success rate aren't the same
Yeah.
thing. I don't know. What do either one of you think of? I'm trying to think how to phrase this. So if you have, let's say we get to the point where, like when I was talking about before, where the sort of Turing test type thing is bidirectional. This is what interests me because almost all forms of oppression or bigotry are based off of visual appearance. So, like, let's say for whatever reason, you hate people that are lactose intolerant, but you can't tell that by looking at them. So that kind of exposes the weirdness of it. So I'm wondering if we get to that point between the sort of bidirectionality of the Turing test in conjunction with maybe the sort of merger of technology and humans, like the enhancement stuff I was talking about. Maybe that could be this bizarre way of sort of creating a more homogenous society, which would be more peaceful and accepting of others. What do you think of that?
I have always wondered how the US manages to work ahead by being as diverse as it is. Because especially in Europe before the whole, immigration, which, in certain countries started much earlier than in others, the main reason why it would function was because the vast majority of people had about the same ideas. And then you see something like the US where people can, very hugely differ one from another. I mean, obviously, you don't have, complete identical ideas in places like Europe as well. But in the vast majority of cases, the difference is not that big. But then, you just see the place like the US where you have basically the flat earther working together with the guy who believes in evolution, working together with the guy who believes we came here from aliens, and all like that, It's just this huge mess.
I sort of have there's other smaller components, but I have the overriding answer for you. So there's generally two types of interaction between people in a society that consist of things that they depend on, like at their job, so people making their food, stuff like that. One's called organic solidarity, and the other one's called mechanical solidarity. The mechanical one is kind of like in the more rural areas where people are like the population is less dense, and so they're not really forced to kind of interact with each other a whole lot. And that's why you see things like in low density population areas, they're more homogenous and they don't take kindly to outsiders or people that are different. You go to something that's super densely populated, like a city, like LA, for example. That's organic solidarity, where it's like these people live in such close quarters and work in such close quarters to each other that if they were to behave that way, they couldn't not only survive, but their life would just suck all around. So they just kind of mentally toss that out the window. And it's like, sure, maybe they'll make comments here and there, but when it comes down to it, they interact with people that are nothing like them. And it kind of strips away that sort of stuff that really doesn't ultimately matter. And they just think of them as other people that just happen to not be like them. And that's why the United States can survive that way.
But then
because the population density is higher in the cities, so it's like that huge amount of people think that way kind of balances with the people that don't think that way.
But don't you also have the problem in the cities where, when they actually interact with people, there is a much lower, actual connection in that sense, where it's like, yeah, sure, you are like a person I have to deal with. But yeah, I'm dealing with you and that's about it.
Yeah, you do have that, but it's more like I mean, it's kind of like what you like if you think of a stereotypical like I don't know, New York City cab driver. Like someone cuts them off and they're like, "Hey, fuck you," and then it's over with. Like they don't they don't dwell on it, you know, that doesn't like ruin their day. They don't personally like they just express themselves and they move on. Whereas like if you're out in like a sort of less densely populated area, they'd probably like take it way more personally because they understand that, hey, I might see that guy again, or he could be my customer someday, or you know, something like that. Whereas like that's just not going to happen in say a population of like whatever number you want to pick that's low. But
But doesn't it also have like an impact on, for example, charity? Like if you know, okay, all those people, I will, I don't know. Like I have always noticed that in the city, people tend to have like more communication. Like you talk with much more people, but you're
Right.
never really close to people. And I always wondered, how would that have an impact on, for example, like charity? If everyone every Sunday goes to church and you have those 20 people and those are the people if one of them has something, the 19 people, will basically, dish in more money to make that one person be healthy. Whereas if, there are a million people, but you don't quite know anyone, so why should you really bother? Isn't there like this kind of disconnect there?
Yeah, but it's not like a negative impact. It's very similar to a lot of outcomes you have with people that join the military. So they'll form bonds and friendships that can be strong, but they kind of in the back of their head understand that at any minute that could end, either through someone getting deployed somewhere else or a combat death or something like that. And you can see it even like once people get out, at least in the United States, the people that I've personally known too, where it's like, yes, they treat you decently and they think of you as a friend just like you would normally. But if you were to say not be their friend for some dramatic reason, they would just keep going with their life. So it's not like they don't care. It's just that it's an understanding of this could be a very short interaction and I will never see you again. It's like this haiku moment where like I'm just gonna enjoy it while it lasts. I mean, so like I know a guy, for example, in New York City who had a friend for years and then he moved away and they lost touch. And then over a decade later, he randomly sees him getting on one of the trains. They say hi for like 10 seconds, are super happy to see each other, and that's it. They go their separate ways. So it's kind of like that, where they don't really have this sort of like strong attachment, to like, I gotta have this person around me kind of thing. But they still enjoy your company as a person and that kind of stuff, just like you would with like a more common friendship. So there's a lot of interesting parallels there. But if you notice too, like it's not a coincidence that large cities are blue, like politically in the United States, and very rural areas are red. That's exactly why. States, the progressives, the liberals, the people that push for things like equal rights, whatever, any version of basically of rights and treating people fairly is super strong in the blue areas. That's exactly why. Whereas people that are just like, no, let's just keep it like it is. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Tend to live in the red areas. That's like straight down the line. That's exactly why. Population in the United States balanced between those two mentalities, and because of those, because it's close enough, they need each other. Because if you have something that's completely progressive or completely conservative, it's a great way to get a failed state. You can't do like off the hook transitions like that. So like even though I'm a liberal, I understand that I need people to oppose me on the conservative side to kind of rein me in and let things happen on a more kind of organic, natural society as a whole can adapt to it and accept it systemically, and vice versa.
Wasn't that
That's why the United States has succeeded so far at things like that.
anything to say?
If a guy falls in love with a sex bot with a dick, is it gay?
What if the bot's a trap?
That's a good question. Do robots have genders?
I don't see why not.
Yeah, I guess gender is kind of an ambiguous term these days. So I guess we could just say like, yeah, I identify as a human female or whatever. That's fine.
Or it could just be a third one, or whatever, or fifth, or whatever.
I have
It's just
a
however it
weird
expresses itself.
question because like we have this whole melanin thing in our skin where we're kind of like pre-settled to have, you know, certain color, but they can just like spray paint themselves. So if one day they go and spray paint themselves, are they then part of a different racial minority?
Well, race is way more than that. That's interesting, but race isn't just appearance. There's
No,
a
obviously there are
cultural overlap with
cultural
it.
thingies, but like a robot, a thingy, an artificial, like take a person, and then you know for just as an experiment, you take
Yeah.
this robot person, you know, give it a Caucasian look and let that person walk around and talk to people. And then you take that very same robot, act the same way, but completely just changed appearance and walk around again. You know, for the vast majority of people who don't know this person, it would just be a completely different person, a completely different, you know, everything.
What's interesting to me about that is people would want to assign some kind of gender to it. Like there's nothing that says it should, but people do that to kind of categorize things, including the person or robot. So it's not this nonsense you see on like YouTube, you know, bedroom stuff where it's like, I feel like this today. It's like, no, this is how I express myself, and it happens to fit the description of this in this particular society. And if it doesn't exist, well, then we need to introduce it because it's prevalent enough that people think this about this segment of society. So I think we talked about before where this isn't gender, this is race, but there's parts of Africa, specifically Nigeria is one I'm familiar with, where race isn't even a concept. They don't even have a word for it in most tribal languages. It just doesn't exist. So that's a great for it being socially constructed, because it's not, when people say race, the confusion is, yeah, you look different than me. Well, right, but that's not the only thing we're talking like cultural differences. So I'm a white guy, but there's places I can go where my friends will refer to me as, you know, like with the N-word, like as their good friend. I could never say it, but like they consider me to be black pretty much, just because of how I fit in with the culture, even though I'm blatantly white. Like
You're like
when
an
you say,
albino.
yeah, but like when you say, so like in this particular area I'm thinking of, if you call somebody white boy, you're not referring to the color of their skin. You're referring to a socioeconomic status. So like typically a suburban person that's sheltered, that wouldn't be able to make it on their own well, all that stuff. That's a white boy. They wouldn't say that about me. You know, like we brothers. That's how it is. So it's like that's what I say. That's what I mean when I say race is way more than just melanin levels or combinations of, you know, the different types that produce the color. And I think that's, I know this is off topic, but I think this is where a lot of
But
people
doesn't this kind
go
of
wrong on YouTube.
But doesn't this kind of, you know, go a bit against your, you know, thingy with like the visual discrimination? Because how are they supposed to discriminate against you visually? If
Yeah, but these people know me.
yeah, but they have to know you in order to not discriminate.
Sorry, I'm just laughing at what Apes just said. No, I'm not offended. That's hilarious. Well, that's kind of like, okay, so let's say, for example, if you're a white guy that's born in East Side Cleveland, Ohio, which is overwhelmingly black, especially the further east you go, you are going to get your ass kicked hardcore until you prove yourself. You got to prove that you're worthy of being part of whatever community you're born in, that you're going to represent it, if you're somewhere else successfully without bringing shame. Uphill battle, but if you do that, they're going to respect the shit out of you. If you don't, you better move. How about that?
Just to see if anyone...
But that's what it is. So like once you do that, they know you. It's not even like when they think of race, they don't think of, hey, your skin is this color or your hair looks like this, etc. It's you're with this group and you're cool with these people and you understand culture X. That's what makes you part of this group that most people refer to when they call race. And that's where a lot of people on YouTube make the mistake of when they kind of mock the idea of race being a social construct, is because they're just thinking of it physically. And sure, if it was only physical, then yeah, that'd be ridiculous, but it's not. It's a combination, and sometimes only one of them.
We completely went off topic, by the way. I'm super sorry.
Real. It's not like it's not real. So like there's like what drives me nuts the most about SJWs on YouTube, because I don't like talking about them because it's just an internet phenomenon. I don't see this on university at all.
I have to say, Steven Pinker would somewhat disagree.
With what part?
With the part that there are no SJWs outside of YouTube.
Oh, well, I'm not saying there's none. I'm saying in my experience and colleagues' experience, it's like a non-issue. Wait, did you mean not Steven Pinker? Did you mean Jordan Peterson?
No, I mean Steven Pinker.
Oh, okay.
Like Steven Pinker was on this platform where they were talking about free speech, right? And he was talking about, for example, there are certain ideas that basically on campus are pretty much a taboo, where you have facts that cannot necessarily be discussed even, And then
Sure.
As he says that, he makes a very decent explanation of what it is and so on and so forth. And then not hours later, basically, that was online, you have people completely quote mining the heck out of him from the university community, which was hilarious, because Steven Pinker, even offline partially, but Steven Pinker was there saying things like, if you look at the criminal statistics, there is a disproportionate percentage, per capita of black crime, and then he goes on later to say, you just go a decade later or a decade earlier, or a couple of decades later and earlier, and you will see that is completely different. So, it might be that in 20 years, this will no longer be the case, right? So he points out that the current state is not necessarily like, an absolutist state. But he says, if you are a student, and you don't get to hear this, or this is not a topic you are allowed to discuss, and then you get exposed to this kind of knowledge when you are, with people who have malicious intent, you don't quite have any way to counterbalance it. You don't really have a way to think about it, in an objective, critical way. And he brought up a couple of things, the things like, capitalism generally tends to bring better results than communism, for example. I've seen this so often, that people who go to university have this idea that socialism and communism are just so much huger and better and gianter, whereas, at the end of the day, that's not quite correct.
Oh, but don't you know, communism's never actually been tried, because communism is a global system and we've never implemented it globally.
This is a whole can of worms, which I'd like to go into. That's fine, but just to kind of finish where I was going, was the thing that drives me nuts with like the SJW crowd type stuff on the internet is they ruin legitimate ideas by running with them to an extreme because they don't understand them. So like this whole social construct thing, it's like they want to make everything a social construct and say that that means it's not real in the sense that they can change it anytime they want and it just counts or something.
But don't you
But there are-
understand? Don't you understand? You know, see, look. Numbers are a social construct, and we keep discriminating against one. Why does one have to be inferior to two? This is so like 2 is twice as valuable as 1. We seriously have to think about evening out the odds of 1 and 2. 1 was not meant to be inferior to 2. Poor 1.
Saying that 2 plus 2 equals 4 is just like saying marriage is only between a man and a woman. Why can't 2 plus 2 equal 5? These are exactly equivalent concepts.
That's exactly what I mean. Where it's like they think it means it's not real. So like there are legitimate social constructs, but that does not mean, oh, you can just make up whatever you want and it fits in this definition or whatever you want to say. It's like there's plenty of legitimate concepts like that out there, but these people that run to the extreme with it and don't understand what they're talking about destroy that idea for like people that are completely unfamiliar with it. It's just infuriating to someone that has to deal with like actual social issues every day, like in an academic environment. It's like you're ruining minds. You are literally ruining minds. Because now there's people that will just immediately be repelled by the phrase social construct when it's a completely valid thing. It's just misunderstood so widely now all over the internet that it makes people just stop paying attention and tune out when they shouldn't.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Cryptocurrency, is it money? Is it, considerable as money? Can we call this money?
Yeah. There's a great example of a social construct. Money isn't worth anything. It's just because we agree on its value and we use it to trade. It's very real, but it's still something that's not physical in the sense that like if I give you a coin for something that you own, like we agree on that, you don't care about the physical coin itself. You care about the value that we and the rest of society agree that it represents. So there's a great example of a social construct is money.
Or morality.
And yes, I would say Bitcoin.
Every fucking day, morality. If morality is a social construct, if it's something that society does, something that society comes up with, it's not real at all. It doesn't exist.
Right. Right.
It's like, well, that's retarded. I'm sorry.
Yep. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
So if robots...
But yeah, I would say it. Anytime, it doesn't even really matter what the material is. It could be physical, non-physical. As long as the concept is, we agree on this thing having value X, and we're going to use it to barter in some way, then it counts.
Now, an even weirder question. We have already established how much, cyborgs are inferior to humans, apparently. And so, if we take that a step further, can we say that cyborg morality is inferior to human morality?
That could be the case.
Cyborgs don't have morality; they don't go to heaven.
They're soulless devil beasts with vacuum cleaners in their feet.
What?
I'm sorry. If you were a cyborg, would the first thing you would do not be put vacuum cleaners in your feet?
I don't know. That's a pretty good proposition.
I would do that.
Gravity boots are tempting though, or maybe like the rocket boots that you see in like Star Trek.
Yeah, but your carpet, you don't have to vacuum anymore.
Yeah, but who
What
wants to vacuum anyway?
What are you gonna do with rocket boots? It's
fly
they're
around
dangerous.
and shit.
You know, sure you can, I guess, get through traffic better, but
accidentally run into walls.
There are people who buy Ferraris. Why wouldn't they put a rocket on their feet?
Entertain my
you're
cat
just
as a
gonna
treasure.
accidentally start fires. It's a bad idea.
Everyone puts up
That would make it
Christmas
great.
trees, and they manage to live just fine with, risking fire every time they put up a stupid Christmas tree. And so why shouldn't they put rockets on their feet?
How the hell does Iron Man fly around so easily? Like, he can launch from anywhere, and it never, like, starts a giant fire in the house or anything.
And like just like the sheer amount of force that he would need to lift him off the ground with that pack and the distance between the pack and the ground. Like that just doesn't add up.
No, it really
Like he should
doesn't
be
add up,
on
so-
fire or not going anywhere.
Yeah, I don't see why you would want this. Go for the vacuum cleaners. No.
One more thing.
Okay, you've
Much better
changed my
superhero.
mind.
Yeah, but
You-
if there are robots, if we are robots, and we don't have anything like necessarily organic around in the house, it's very unlikely that we get a lot of dust. Because the thing that makes most of the dust is, you know, pet fur and shed skin, and I mean that's our dirt, that's our dust, that's the garbage we have in. Usually we don't have that. Like if we would just all be robots, we don't really have that problem. So why would we have vacuum cleaners?
That is a good portion of it, but depending where you live, like in the United States anyway, most of it is actually soil. It's weird. Like even in the city. I just happened to be reading about this like 3 days ago, and I just bizarre coincidence.
So like if we would have a soil filter for everyone in the house, then we wouldn't need a vacuum cleaner. Is that what you're saying?
Say that again?
If we would have like a soil filter where, you know, you go through and it just, you know, gets rid
Of course,
of the
the
soil
mic cuts
from...
out.
That
Well,
would
like
be
even in the
so
city, you have that just from dirt, you know, like that you would see on the side of a road, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but you know, robots have this advantage where, you know, unless like you put a bit of lack on them and they're like rust free, and so they could put as a door they could put this kind of, you know, thingy where like everything gets just rinsed off and then dry blowed off, and they can just further and then there's everything just clean because the dirt is all off already. Wouldn't that be like a solution?
I think we're all overlooking this more like overriding thing, whereas like if they're robots, maybe they just don't care about dust.
Well, they would though. Like if they have the same problem as, for example, a computer does, they are completely obsessed with not getting dust inside of their chip stuff.
Oh yeah, a robot probably has like an air intake fan on their head.
You know, they have to keep everything cool, man.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of my phone that's got like a P67 rating or whatever. It's like basically impervious to dust, and so like the robots are like jealous of it.
Yeah, they're like, God damn it, fucking phones. Yeah.
Superior to us, and they imprison them.
God. These dumb animals are so much. It's kind of like us with like cheetahs, gorillas, and eagles. It's like we don't have the big claws, the big muscles, the super fast speed. And we're like, God damn it, you're a bunch of fucking idiot animals. It's totally inferior, but you're so much better than us.
You're somehow simultaneously inferior and superior. Fuck you.
Because you don't have a big giant intake fan on your forehead.
Could we like team up? You know, just like hang out with eagles or
Hang out with what?
hang out with eagles or cheetahs or some
Oh
shit.
fuck yeah, dude.
Just call it.
You know,
Like the ultimate
it's kind of
combination.
a problem for them, like not to attack you. You have to negotiate that a little bit, I think. Integrate yourself, like especially with the cheetahs. Somehow integrate yourself into their society. I don't even know if cheetahs have societies. I know nothing about cheetahs.
Yeah, I don't know.
But if it's like a lion, for example, instead, you'd have to kind of like you'd have to convince them that you're one of their kind, which is hard when you have a big humming air intake fan on your forehead. They're like constantly squealing and stuff. They're always like, "Ooh, that's food."
If we're picking,
you should read this out.
Yeah, just give me.
Hey, Enigma Seeker.
Yeah, hey Siki. No, he just made a super chat where he thanks me for replying to his video. And funny thing is, I actually want to make a part 3. I just never really got to it.
Those were fun responses.
You know, Siki put in so much work though with this video.
Yeah.
Like putting all that stuff together. I mean, most video replies that we get are like super, you know, sloppily made and just thrown together. And he put in all this work where he makes everything visual and stuff. I mean, it's really nice to reply to this kind of replies, because you know that just
even the visual stuff. So like he sent me like I think I guess you could call it like a clip or summary or something of you and I's past streams, and he does some like animation type stuff at the beginning and things like that. It was pretty cool. Oh, looks like you're being accused of being a secret agent for the robots here.
Yeah, Martin Mihak, Iset is a liar. This thing obviously doesn't work. She works for the robots. No, I work for the Reptoids. You have to get your things straight. I'm working for the Reptoid Illuminati. And don't tell anyone, please.
There's not that big of a difference. Oddly, for some reason, you know, I'm a Reptoid, and I came out a couple of years ago. Before I was in kind of serious denial. It was a dark time. But people thought I was a robot then. Like, there were a lot of people who said I was a robot. It's like, no, I'm not a robot. I've never been a robot. I don't know where you got the idea that I am a robot.
It was the ventilator fan.
But I guess it's
Give
just
it away.
Reptoids. Yeah, hidden under my hat, the fan. They could hear the hum, the distant hum, muffled by the hat. But apparently Reptoids and robots are just that indistinguishable to people. Oddly.
Does Alex Jones know this?
Well, he does now.
That would be the best, to get a response video from Alex Jones.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. I think I'd have to go a little bit further. I think I'd have to remember not
just
to
in
break
general.
the wall. Like, I would have to actually remember to stay in character occasionally. Which hasn't happened on a regular basis.
Just in general, if you could like bait him into doing that, that would be hilarious.
Oh yeah, it'd be great.
No, someone should just like take the videos and just cut pieces together where, you know, Logicked is very Reptoidy, and then send those to this guy and then see if there's actually a reply to it.
I don't think so. There's not enough marketability, name recognition. If I was a movie star, maybe.
What was it? Oh, that picture from a while back that was circulating the internet in when Trump was visiting Saudi Arabia, and they all have their hands on the orb thing. I can't think of the name of it now.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch of jokes about it. Someone like had hand drawn over top of it, like to work out a Trinity Illuminati symbol, like just a really shitty like MS Paint, like and claiming that's what it is. And they're like, "Is this the Illuminati or something like that?" And I retweeted it at Alex Jones. I was like, "Well," and it had a suspicious timing of a view. Let's just put it that way. Somebody wants to know where to go. Somebody wants to know if you 3D printed your child. I can't find it. Oh, John Hightower.
That would take far too much technical expertise.
Was it? I was talking with someone the other day, and it said step 1, buy a 3D printer. Step 2, print a 3D printer. Step 3, return the 3D printer. And I was like, well, why not step 4, continue doing this with 3D printed printers? To credit. Alex Jones is a Reptoid. His purpose on this planet is to make people who are trying to tell you the truth seem crazy. Yeah, I can go with that.
No. You have to look at him more closely. He's clearly not a Reptoid. Reptoids are cold-blooded, and he is not. He gets freaky about everything. He cannot control himself because he's so human. If he would be a Reptoid, he would be sitting there and explaining to you very clearly how crazy Reptoids actually are.
Yeah, he'd be way more calm and collected. And he's nowhere near that.
Whoop, the microphone's falling over. Of course,
No.
Logicked did. He's a von Neumann machine of skepticism.
What?
Yeah.
That's in the chat.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it.
He looks like a slug man. Who, me? That's not very nice.
Maybe Alex Jones. Alex Jones says
Is it Martian?
from the moon. A Martian from the moon, yeah.
That guy, no, that guy is clearly an act. Like if you look at his body language long enough.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, women have a sort of 3D printer installed. They assemble according to chemical rules and only when ordered to print.
That is awesome.
That is cool, yeah, that is a good one.
I'm gonna use that in real life. I'll credit you, don't worry.
Unfortunately, sometimes the printer doesn't work that well when the ugly babies come out.
It's because they didn't refill the ink.
Yeah, it's not precise enough.
They didn't refill the material.
Mm-hmm.
But what if it's a looking in the chat, what if it's an Alex Jones 3D printer? Is he turning the children gay? That's kind of
Is it flux?
getting dark.
Flux? What is this?
Like iemand. Like is even iemand waarschijn. Like iemand fucking-lish.
That just showed up right as you said that for me. Like it popped on the screen right as you said it. No, John.
Yeah, I think that's right. This person is speaking fucking-lish.
Your brain is 3D prints consciousness.
Well,
people have fun in the chat, I see.
yeah, no, this is good. I like the chat interaction at the end. I always like that.
Yeah. No, it's a pity we can't really let the people in, but it's kind of hard because we have a very different hangout setup this time.
Yeah.
All babies are ugly, terrible creatures. Need to get a job. Put some steel bristles around them, and shove them down the chimney. They're a great cleaner.
You know, the weirdest thing about babies is, you know, maybe that's just like us, you know, looking from a reptoid perspective. But have you ever seen, like, when they come out and they don't know what to do with their arms and their legs? They're they're like a machine that hasn't been programmed yet. They're so machine-wise. They're so not human.
That was one of the creepiest moments of my entire life. Because I remember like, for one thing, the whole room basically turned red in the whole birth process for me. I'm assuming, like, I had, like, blood rushing into my eyeballs or something. But, like, in this creepy red room, you walk over and they just put the baby on, like, the weight and temperature thing. Like, I guess they heat it up, they cook it a little bit once it comes out. And it's just jerking around like it has no idea what it's doing, and it looks very much like a robot that's not quite in control of itself. And it's absolutely creepy. You don't look at it and go, oh, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. You look at it and you go, oh my god, it's out of a horror movie. Honestly.
It makes sense. You're just like thrust into this world and you don't know how to use yourself and what's around you.
You know all those like Japanese horror movies where they have like the girls that like jerk their limbs around all fucking weird and it's super creepy? It's like that, and that's probably where they got the idea for that. It's just those first few minutes. It's almost like after those first few minutes it starts to figure things out a little bit and stops being quite as creepy. At least in the case of ours.
I can't help but wonder if, so like I don't know what it's like for non-human animals, but humans have one of the lowest gestation periods in reproduction out of all the animals on the planet. Like the 9 months or whatever, like that's really short compared to things like, especially like elephants, like ridiculously longer. So I'm wondering if like they're more equipped when they're born to sort of comprehend their new reality.
Human babies?
Yeah, more than human babies.
Oh, elephants. Well,
yeah, like baby elephants.
Yeah, well, I think so.
Oh, partially.
Don't they come out able to like run around and stuff?
Yeah, now I want to look it up. It's something crazy. Like, how long do they?
I mean, human babies come out just basically able to do nothing at all. They
Right.
just lie there, jerk their limbs around, and scream, and that's all they do.
Yeah, 18 to 22 months is the average for elephants.
Wow.
So like 3 times. 2 to 3 times.
Yeah.
That
Makes
sounds
sense.
good though. Imagine being pregnant that long.
Yeah, but at least they have 4 big legs to carry themselves around on. It's not quite as hard to like waddle around
Yeah. Yes.
with a
Yeah.
big bubble on the front.
Yeah. They don't have to wait for someone to teach them how to walk.
No, I mean the women. Like they don't have to like.
Oh.
They don't have to like. You know, waddle around with their big bellies sticking out and like. You know, be extra super careful on the icy ground.
They're just like, whatever, I'm still an elephant.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've always assumed elephants think. Just whatever, I'm still an elephant. What's new today? I don't know. I'm still an elephant though.
I count.
Elephants never forget that they're elephants.
Fish always forget that they're fish.
They do.
Always never forget that.
Should we close up?
Yeah.
Should we call it today?
This is getting kind of
Wrap it
stupid.
up.
It's fun sometimes.
Yeah, no, this is good.
We didn't get anywhere.
Not really.
we didn't.
That's like
figure
some
out
of the best
system
times.
of human rights for robots.
Yeah.
Which I
We'll
think
have
was the
to
topic. I'm
like
not
codify
sure.
laws some of the time.
Yeah. Well, this was a very off-topic stream. Yeah. Fun.
You know,
But that's
it's because I'm here. I shouldn't have been here. You guys have your serious conversations about things, and I don't know. I'm not awake
Off
or
topic.
smart enough to be.
Off topic can be fun.
Yeah.
Off topic can be fun because it's natural. Just kind of shooting from the hip.
Shooting the shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, cool. Thanks everybody for stopping in. And all the super chat
Yeah.
going on there.
Awesome.
Yeah, super chats. That's cool.
Great discussion. I know we didn't go full on what we wanted to, but we had some really interesting
I think we
side
decided that
moments
Roombas
there.
are allowed in the bathroom as long as they don't peek under the doors.
Get your head out of the chat. Well,
Okay.
let's see. What about
Okay,
brains? I guess they need to.
Should I just like
Yeah,
wait? What? How?
Are you
okay.
doing some sort of a formal outro here, or what?
Yeah, let's say hi. Thanks everyone for coming. It was awesome, and as usual, I will just eventually pop up again with some new stream, cause that's fun. Also, if you have anything that you want to talk about, or that you want us to talk about, or you want to pop in yourself, then you should just let me know, preferably on Twitter or a private message on YouTube or something, cause that's where you most likely can find me. Otherwise, I might not find it, like on Facebook. I'm horrible at Facebook. But yeah, thanks everyone for popping in, and it was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. I really enjoyed it.
Bye-bye.
I'll catch you guys later.
Bye. Okay, now,
Bye.
big question. How do I turn this off? Here. Okay, this is embarrassing. Wait, I think